How did God create the universe? That's what we're going to examine today on Answers for Living. How did God create? Very simple. Genesis 1:3 says, "And God said, let there be light." And there was light. In chapter 1, verse 6 says, "And God said." Verse 9, "And God said." Verse 14, "And God said." Verse 20, "And God said." Verse 24, "And God said." Verse 26, "Then God said." What was the method of his creating? He spoke. He spoke it into existence out of nothing. He spoke, and instantaneously, miraculously, what he spoke happened. Psalm 33, verse 6 and verse 9 says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, their starry hosts by the breath of his mouth. He spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm." Psalm 148, verse 5 says, "He spoke, and they were created." Romans 4:17 says, "God who gives life to the dead and calls into being what does not exist." Colossians 1:16 says, "By him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible. All things were created by him and for him." And John 1:3 says, "All things came into being by him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being." Revelation 4:11 says, "Thou art worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For thou dost create all things, and because of thy will they existed and were created." This is where everything came from. Nothing existed. God willed it to exist. He spoke his will, and what he spoke came into existence. This is God's first-hand eyewitness account of creation. Oh, this is important. If you can't accept the truth that God spoke creation into existence, you will not be able to accept the rest of the Bible. Remember the story of Jesus and the disciples in the boat with a really bad storm? Jesus was asleep. The disciples were panic-stricken. They wake Jesus up and they tell him they're going to die. Jesus stands up and says, "Peace, be still," and immediately there was a great calm. It says that the wind and the waves obeyed. Now that's a real miracle. Remember Jesus outside the tomb of Lazarus? Lazarus has been buried for 4 days. He is decomposing. Jesus cries out, "Lazarus, come forth," and the dead came forth. He spoke. The man with leprosy asked Jesus to heal him. Jesus said, "I will, be clean." And instantly the leprosy went away. My point is, if you don't believe that God spoke creation into being, you will struggle with every miracle in the Bible. Listen, God said it. I believe it. And that settles it for me.